is supposed to keep an eye, keep an ear open for all of the comings and goings of the supernatural world in our world. It's almost like a serious version of Men in Black, the film Men in Black. And we thought, what a great organization to base a show on. And we went to a very good friend of mine, the writer John Lee Hancock, and he and I have done a number of films together. Most recently we did a film called, I produced, that he wrote and directed, called The Little Things with Denzel Washington. And he loves spies. So Talamasca is a spy story, but it has a supernatural element to it. But it is at its core a spy story. So we've tried to do Jean Le Carré with this supernatural element underneath it. So, sorry, I hope a long-winded answer.
Hola, muy buenas. Lo primero, bueno, espero que estén disfrutando de este festival. Y mi pregunta es para Marc. Ha sido productor de muchísimas películas, series de televisión. Si me puedes explicar un poco cómo va ese proceso de la producción, o sea, al final, cuando haces una película, ¿quién tiene más control creativo? ¿El director o guionista o el productor?
I think in terms of creative control, I always make sure that it belongs to the features, of course it belongs to the director, and in television more often than not, the showrunner, the creator, and perhaps in second position, the director. But it's always for a producer, for me, I don't want to be the controlling creative hand. I want to support the person whose vision of that show or that movie we're making. I'm very lucky because I work in television and in features, and producing for both is quite different, and it lets me, in effect, exercise different muscles.
I thought I was in control. Nobody told me. All right, go ahead. Next question.
By the way, I'd like to say it's a big honor for me to work with this man. Who's an actor I've admired for I don't know how many years. You look at his filmography, it's crazy. And he does the thing that you want actors always to do. He surprises. So we are so lucky to have him on our show.
Next question.
Okay.
Okay. I asked something before. About the Talamasca interview and my fair witches. How you manage the creation of an universe about unrise novels, and what do you think that is the importance of the TV series in the development of the fantastic genre today?
I have in my past, in features, I produced Narnia movies, so Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and we did 3 films. It was very, very important to the fans and to C.S. Lewis later that you honor his work. So I think what you do when you adapt a television show or a film, the most important thing is you don't have to be strictly faithful to the text, but you have to be aware of and respectful of basically of the meaning, of the style, of the import of the work. And so what's wonderful about the Talamasca is we had a lot of room to play with because there is no book called the Talamasca. It's just an organization. So we were able, whereas Interview with the Vampire is very faithful to the book. It is Roland Jones who created the TV show. It's his interpretation of Anne Rice. But it's always it's a tricky one. Years and years ago, I produced the Robert Redford film, The Natural, and the book is quite different from the finished film. In fact, the film, for those of you who've seen it, ends on a very high note, the book ends on a very low note, and people, some of the purists, the literary critics, were quite offended with the movie. However, Bernard Malamud, who wrote the book, loved the movie, and he said, "No, it's not exactly my book, but it's a wonderful story." So it depends. You can take a certain amount of freedom, and it all depends on the underlying work.
Okay, my question is for William. What drew you into this project, and what do you like about your character?
Well, I always believe that, I've said this expression a million times in my life, but if it's not on the page, it's not on the stage. I think everything starts with good writing, especially, as Mark said, in television. When I first met Mark and John Lee Hancock and Mark Lavery, our two showrunners, it was a great conversation. Certainly not a role like anything I've ever played before. It's a little different than a soldier or an astronaut. This character has fangs, slightly different. But it was reading the scripts that really drew me to the project. Now, I was a fan of watching Interview with the Vampire, the first two seasons of the show. Actually, no disrespect to the film, but I love the show way more than what I saw back in the 80s. I love the actors in it as well. I've gotten to know them a little bit, through press things in the last couple of months. But I was, everything begins with that, with the script. I loved John Lee Hancock, our creator of the show. I love his thoughts about the character that he shared with me in a coffee shop, and he stayed very true to his word about who Jasper is and why he's in this story. And so I believe, I signed on and agreed after I read the first two episodes. Had not read the next four until I was already over in England when we were starting to shoot it, but it just kept getting better and better each time I got a new script, and it's always fun to walk down a new road, and this is definitely a new road for me.
And what we were able to do is, thanks to his performance, we just expanded as the thing with television, you can be shooting and writing at the same time, and we were able to expand his part because we can such a delicious character and so much to play with.
Yeah, I believe it was the final week of photography, and John Lee came up to me and he said, "I have some new things. They're in the beginning of like episodes 1 and 2. I'm like, bring it on." And so I think the last thing that I shot in season 1 was actually from episode 1 that we added in at a later date, which was really cool.
Hi, Mark.